Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor
and his cousin
gives you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides, and for the latest updates and information, you can find me on Twitter at Professor Sides. You can find my cousin Jared on Twitter at Cousin Jared. This college football episode covers select games from Week 8 of the 2022 season, including all the midweek games. In case you're new here, check out the webpage on the banner for a primer and explanation. That's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new. You can pause if need be. Otherwise, the goals for this episode are to share key information about these games, give you a few things to think on, and explain why certain plays are being made. We never recommend blindly tailing or fading any pick, but rather to hear the justifications and thought processes to make sure you're fully on board with us or against us before investing your hard-earned money. We will make a pick on every game, but you should take what you like and leave the rest. Remember that there are no locks in gambling, so we'll provide our loves, likes, and leans as A, B, and C grade picks to indicate our confidence level with respect to scaling wagers. However, please understand that good and bad variance will occur, so as much as we'd like to say we'll be profitable each and every week, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Cousin Jared, I feel like episode 1 went pretty well, collaborating here on our picks.
Yeah.
I feel like that was the easy one. I feel like today's going to be the real test of this, how well this works with both of us just staring at each other and being like, well, here's a game.
Yep. And it will be played and we'll go from there.
Something will happen, right? I think the other issue, at least for me personally, I went to the state fair today, ate 9,000 calories of pure sugar and fried carb goodness. So if I just fall asleep in the middle of the episode, just carry on without me because I'm not sure. I'm like in a coma at this point.
Yeah. Hey, everybody else in my house has the flu, so I may just pass out in the middle of this. Who's to say what will happen?
I mean, we're playing through injury on this one. It should be a good show. I don't know if it's going to go off the rails. We'll find out.
Yeah.
It should be fun or entertaining or something. Yes. But before we get to that, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you are yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free, and if you turn on notifications, you won't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. We've also got that Patreon page for those of you looking to support the show and get extra benefits. Membership starts at just $3 per month. Get you the play of the day, the plays of the day. Our college football plays of the time slot last 2 weeks have just been crushing it. It also gets you just a quick little write-up and or an alert for all the extra plays we make. We did 5 of them already yesterday on numbers that either moved or were moving the wrong direction. Wanted to grab them where they were, got better, added a unit on a couple. So all that's on Patreon. And $3 a month gives you just a ton of benefits there. And then you could do a little bit extra and get even more.
And let's go off the rails right away. The Ken college basketball rankings came out. And so, I mean, that is right around the corner for anybody who might be interested in that. Jake is excited. I know the professor here is excited to get sideline, get all the inputs for his model ready for that. I mean, college basketball is going to be here before we know it.
I would excited probably isn't the right word, but it's happening. It will be happening. College basketball is a lot of fun. I love the early part of college basketball. I feel like the model back-to-back years in the last 2 years has just tore it up early on. So I'm looking forward to that. It's the grind of college basketball because there's so many games and it just college football is a grind, but it's a fun grind. And baseball is a grind, but it's my favorite sport. College basketball is a grind, but at the end, there's just we get all those Friday episodes where we're talking Harvard Brown. Man, I don't even know what we're doing here.
Yeah, Harvard Brown and Maction on the court. Yeah. And that is the reason that Jake is here is because it is
to
his
carry
baby.
some of the load there. Yeah,
yes, exactly.
All right, well, let's get to the college football games this week. All lines courtesy of BetOnline. Sign up link in the show description and current as of the time of this recording on Tuesday night. A disclaimer, I guess we'll have to say now. By the time we're talking about these live, I literally pull the lines right before we come on. We'll talk about them, and then I will go lock what we say right after the show. The line might move a little bit, actually. So what you're going to see in the spreadsheet is just a couple of different numbers from what we locked in because it moved in that 30 minutes or hour. I don't think it's going to happen as much in episodes 2 and 3 because the movements will happen as much. It's probably going to be more of an episode 1 thing. I think we got Oklahoma State +4. We talked about it +3.5 on the show. I locked it at +4. Now it's up to plus. Let's just talk about that first real quick. The Oklahoma State situation. It's up to +6, +6.5 now. I don't know if it'll get to 7. The speculation there, Spencer Sanderson in practice last week looked fine last week. People have said maybe his accuracy is down a little bit now since he suffered an injury a couple of weeks ago. But, I mean, he played in the game. I kind of don't make too much of it. I kind of think if he's played last week, he's probably going to play this week. There was no hit that made him wince in that game that made it seem like he made things worse. Didn't have to come out for a play. So I assume he'll play. Gundy's being real coy about if he's practicing or not. So I think that number's gone up because it's like, oh, well, he's not telling us he's practicing, but he didn't practice last week. So I don't know. Maybe that makes it a little bit more of a concern. Honestly, I'm not sure it matters with regards to the Texas defense. I really think Oklahoma State's going to put up a lot of points either way.
Yeah, I agree.
I was going to say, do you have any other extra thoughts to add to that one?
This isn't backed up by facts, but it just feels like anytime that Texas is going to Stillwater, it's going to be a close game. So, it almost feels like anybody could be starting a quarterback for Oklahoma State, and this game would find a way to be close. So I'm like you. I think Sanders is going to play, but I feel good about especially now, 6.5 or whatever it is, regardless.
Yeah, no, and I've heard some people talk about it's not a crazy strategy, just kind of saying, let's just wait. And if he gets a 7, great. If not, 6 is still a great number. I think that's a fine strategy too. If he gets a 7, even better. But if it doesn't, I'm like 6, 6.5, whatever. I think it's all good numbers at that point. I think it's gonna be a wild, fun game in Stillwater. We're gonna cover all the midweek games. We got a Wednesday night game here, 7:30 Eastern. Georgia State and Appalachian State. Appalachian State's a 9.5-point favorite here. Sideline says 10.1. According to the model, there's not really an edge on either side. Total is 59. I'm curious if you have a total take on this one. I don't at the moment, other than what I'm about to say might actually influence our thoughts on the total, and I'll let you react to that. But looking at this one, I like Appalachian State here. I like laying the 9.5. My thought process here is that Georgia State runs the ball a lot. They actually have, I think, more rushing yards per game than passing yards. And Appalachian State's run defense is actually a lot better than their pass defense. And I think you kind of saw that when Appalachian State played North Carolina, right? They got passed on all day.
Yeah.
But when you have a team that wants to run the ball against them, they're a lot more stout. So I think it's a strength on strength type thing. And I think that Appalachian State's defense is better than Georgia State's running offense. I think that frustrates them. I think that makes Georgia State one dimensional. I kind of like laying the 9.5 here, but it's not a huge model edge. So that's just kind of my direction I would go. I'm curious if you agree or disagree with that.
What I would say about this game is Georgia State. I remember Sideline went against them with Coastal Carolina earlier this season, and Coastal Carolina covered easily in that game. And Coastal Carolina hasn't covered easily in many of their games this season. Georgia State would be kind of the exception to that. So I think that I kind of would lean towards it. If Sideline's saying that there's an edge against Georgia State, I would tend to believe that. But the other thing is, I think the last time we saw this App State team, they were losing to Texas State. And I think that
I took Texas State. Sideline said Texas State, to be fair.
You did. And I think what we might have been seeing there is literally, had there been any team ever that had the stretch of games that App State had this season, from the North Carolina game to the A&M game to the James Madison game, James Madison game they lost. Who did they play the week right after A&M?
There was
game day was there. Was it Troy?
I don't remember.
I can't remember who it
Troy
was.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so just like all these crazy games in a row, I feel like that Texas State game was just, I wouldn't say necessarily a letdown spot, but just like kind of a peak moment after all of these things that had happened. It was just like the perfect storm of these kids were probably exhausted and everything. So I think App State was off last week, got a bye week there to rest and recruit, and I think they come out and play really well in this game. So I say let's make it a B grade on App State here, laying the 9.5. That's
what I was thinking too,
because I feel good about that. Here, the total, man, I've got nothing for you on this.
It's interesting. It's around a key number here, on a key number, right? And but I'm with you. It's kind of like, I don't know. I think the Appalachian State shutting down the Georgia State running attack, I don't know if that lends itself to be a higher scoring game or a lower scoring game, right? Because you can kind of play it either narrative. And so again, our goal here is to give you some things to think about, especially as a standalone game. So a lot of y'all want to play this game. I don't blame you. It's fun to have, one game on and a baseball game on and have money on it. Totally get it. And so if you're looking to play this total, I think my thought process is maybe see how you think the game's going to play out. Because if I'm correct, that App State's run defense shuts down Georgia State's run defense, you could make the argument that makes Georgia State just not score very many points and go under, because App State's not going to get to 59 themselves, almost assuredly. You could also make the argument, though, that shutting down that run game makes Georgia State one-dimensional, makes them pass a lot more passes, leads to higher points. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure, and I think that kind of determines which way you go. But a fairly key number here at 59, so one where you can go either way and make a good case as long as it stays here, right? If it starts going up or down, now you're getting off that key number, and now you want to go the opposite direction, of course.
Yep.
So again, be great play for us on App State -9.5 passing on the total. Thursday night, we got two games, 7:30 Eastern, Virginia at Georgia Tech. What do you do with either one of these teams? To be honest, like I think I mentioned this about a different game. I'm fascinated for this game, and I don't think I'm going to learn a dang thing because both of these teams have been all over the map. And so if something happens, I'm going to be like, cool, what does this mean? Like, I don't really have an anchor point here. I don't want to dive too much into the issues here, but Georgia Tech playing better with the interim coach. Virginia, I don't know, probably not, but still probably more talented. I'll say this. Sideline says that this should be Georgia Tech -1.4, has Virginia barely ahead of Georgia Tech in the ratings, but both of them in the 80s. So, I mean, you're talking about neither team the model really believes in. My lean would be take the 3 with Virginia reluctantly and just say, I don't know what the heck's going to happen. Give me a field goal. I don't feel strong about that, though. So I feel like if you kind of lean the same direction, I think we can grab the 3 with a B grade pick. Otherwise, I feel like it may be another one of the C grade picks for us here because this game is just hard to figure out. Total 47. What are your thoughts on this one?
I have no feelings at all about this game. So you would lean taking the 3 points with Virginia. That's probably the smart play. I just can't forget what I've seen with Virginia all season. And, Georgia Tech, if, winning two games
right after to get things right.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like maybe there's some belief with Georgia Tech that they haven't had in a while. And I feel like Virginia has the exact opposite of that. There's just like no belief at all at this point. 47 is really low. But I don't know how you could watch either of these teams this year and go over. I personally would not play under this number either, but at the same time, like, I don't know how you could feel good about over after what we've seen from the Virginia offense all season. I mean, it's just been all season. It's been bad.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's under or pass. The question is, what number are you buying in at on the under? Is it 48, 48 and a half, 49?
Yeah, I guess maybe 48.5, maybe because it's,
40
like, I obviously want to be like, actually, I just have no idea. I would almost say like 51 because I know it would never get to 51, but this is one of those games where I just have no confidence at all in anything. You can tell me anything would happen in this game. I would believe anything could happen in this game except Virginia scoring 45 points. I don't think that would happen. Anything else you told me that would happen in this game, I would believe you.
Yeah, I kind of agree. So let's go Virginia +3, C grade pick. Okay. Again, that's no units on that one. We're not going to affect our bankroll for that, but we are going to say that's our official lean in case you want to pick them. The kind of thought is just smart plays, take the points, but goodness, if you could avoid this game, it's probably worth avoiding. I think under is if you're just saying it's a Thursday night game and you want to be invested, I think go under. I'd still go under 47 if I wanted to be invested. It's under or pass. I might be a little bit more aggressive. I think I might go under 48 would be maybe my buy point. I don't really like under 47. I'm not going over 47. I'm not going over unless you told me. I mean, I'd have to have, if you gave me like 35, I'd say over, but it's never going to happen, right? So otherwise, I feel like 48. I'm starting to really think about the under at 48. But if I had to, I'd still go under 47 because I'm not taking the over with these two teams. There's just no way.
Yeah, and if you want to have any action on a Friday night, there's another game on Friday night that is going to be a much better game If you want a game on Thursday night, I think there's going to be a much better game on Thursday night that you should maybe pay a little bit of attention to.
What a segue. Here we go. Troy and South Alabama. There's actually a really good game Thursday and a really good game Friday. I'm really stoked for the midweek games here later in this one this week. Troy at South Alabama here. South Alabama is a 3-point favorite. Sideline says South Alabama -3. So Sideline says Vegas, nailed it. Total is 46.5. What's your take on this one?
Buy point on the under is 48. If this gets to 48, I think this is a really good underplay. We've seen too many times this season that this is just the type of game that Troy wants to play. They are comfortable mucking it up and keeping it really low scoring. So I definitely like, even maybe like 47.5, you could maybe talk me into the under there. I definitely play it at 48. 47.5, I would think about it. And kind of going along with that, I know you said Sideline says this is set pretty well, but I would lean towards taking the 3 points just because in a low scoring game, who the heck knows what could happen? This could easily end up, 21-20 or something like that. And so I think 3 points is going to go a long way in a game that could potentially be this low scoring.
Or like 16-14, right? Where it's like, how did you get to 16? How many field goals you have to kick to get to 16? Right? Don't do that. But one of those weird numbers that you don't get to because it's just a bunch of field goals, right?
Yeah.
I tend to agree. I think my take on the side on this one is very much the same as the other Thursday night game is. I don't know. Give me the field goal. And so I kind of feel the same about both of them. You like Troy a little bit more. That's enough, I think, since we're collaborating here, a B pick on Troy +3, whereas we had the C pick on Virginia +3, because you like Troy more than Virginia, and I kind of like them both the same. I kind of just think take the field goal, take the points in these situations. And the totals are pretty similar. They should be pretty similar games. It's just one of them feels exciting. One of them's better talent. The other one just feels depressing.
One of them potentially a spot in the Sun Belt championship game on the line. So I think these are the two best teams in the Sun Belt West. Last season this was a Mountain West show. This season has definitely been a Sun Belt show.
Yeah, for sure. Moving to Friday, Tulsa at Temple. Tulsa's a 13-point favorite. Total is 53. Temple, obviously not good. Temple's ranked 118. Tulsa ranked 82nd. There was a time when I was like eyeing Tulsa and a little more excited about them, and that's fallen apart, I guess is what I would say. Sideline says this should be Tulsa -10. Getting 13 is a pretty strong edge, going that at the 10, you go from the push to the win. At 13, you go from the loss to the push. Pretty strong edge here, according to the model. Grabbing the 13 with Temple. I'm not sure I backed Temple this season yet. So, I mean, this is kind of like telling me something here that we're finally on Temple. I like Temple +13. It feels like B grade pick just because Temple's so bad. It's hard to feel like I love it. It feels more like I like it. That's just my perspective. I'm curious to hear what yours is.
Sure. Let's give a B grade on Temple. I just can't get the Tulsa Navy game out of my head, seeing Navy do something that they have not done in years at this point, and just completely tore apart that Tulsa defense. So I think I would probably agree. I think Temple could make this game ugly, and the 13 points could become pretty valuable. And I would I feel pretty good about the under in this game, the under 53. I know I alluded to something similar when Temple played UCF, and that game had, I don't know, like 70 or 80 points, but that is so much the exception to how Temple has played their games this season. It is almost a complete outlier. So I feel like this total may be inflated just a little bit based on that last game that Temple had with UCF. So I would still definitely lean towards the under 53 here.
My fear on this under, and let me reflect this back to you. Tulsa this season gave up 40 to Wyoming, and that was a weird game. So it went to overtime. There were some weird turnovers. Let's just ignore that one, okay? You have 35 to Northern Illinois. Not good. They give up 35 to Ole Miss. Okay. They give up 31 to Cincinnati. But at some point, we got to stop making excuses for them. And all these numbers are above 30. And of course, they give up 51 to Navy.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know, because Temple's offense isn't great. And like we talked about, their game plan is to ugly this up. But it's like, if they're ever going to score, it's going to clearly be off this Tulsa defense that's like paper thin. It feels one of those unmovable objects and whatever, right? Those old sayings, because it's like Tulsa feels like they allow points to everybody, but Temple's offense isn't going to be one to live the scoreboard either. So like, even with knowing that, is that you're still feeling under 53?
I mean, if you don't feel strongly about it, then I would say, let's just say 55, everybody's favorite key number. If this is at 55, play the under at 55.
All right. There you go. There's our buy point then, 55. I like that a little better. So if it gets there, we will add that If not, we will pass on it. And if this game ends up like 14-13, then next time I'm doubtful of an under next week. We'll just roll with it.
That's fine.
The other Friday night game, the interesting one here, UAB and Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky is a 2-point favorite. Total is 57. Sideline says it should be Western Kentucky -1. I mean, we've talked leading up to some of these small conference games here as big games, exciting games. We talked about this last week as a look ahead spot potentially for both of these teams. Well, now we're here. So what is your vision of this game now that we finally made it?
Can I abstain from like having to make any picks on this game? I am excited about this game. I think it's going to be really good. Definitely like one of the top Conference USA games that you're looking forward to for the entire year. I mean, I don't know. This is one, and I don't usually say this very often, but this is one where I think maybe a live bet would be beneficial. Just see how this game plays out, because these two teams want to play vastly different styles. Yeah. And I think you're probably going to be able to watch 5 minutes of this game, 8 minutes of this game, and you're going to have a pretty good idea of how it might turn out. If the teams are going up and down the field, you want to be on Western Kentucky. And if things have slowed down quite a bit, you want to be on UAB. It's really killing me that it's only 2 points here with UAB. I think if either team were getting a field goal, that's where I would say, I want to take the team that's getting the field goal. So the 2 is kind of cramping my style there. 57, again, like who's going to control the pace of this game? I think if I had to pick, and I'm not saying that this should be a B grade or anything. I
have a lean. I have a lean. I'm curious if you go the same way. If so, we're doing it.
Okay, I would say over the 57, because I just think that Western Kentucky, they even if they're down, they could be passing the ball a lot, running a lot of plays, trying to get caught up, and if not, that means that they're winning the game and they've put up a bunch of points, and so I think I see more ways this game goes over than I do under.
I've been burned on the Western Kentucky over for the past 2 weeks. And so I'm thinking under because of that. There were only 52 points in their game against Middle Tennessee. In the game against UTSA, which we all thought would be a barn burner, there were only 59 points. The counter to that, really, the only counter to the under is the game Western Kentucky played against Troy. And Troy would probably be the closest analogy we have here. And that game did get to 61. So that's, if it wasn't for that game, I would say under, but that game has me a little bit scared. So
it sounds to me like we've talked ourselves out of the total.
I think you're right. And I don't think we have a good feel for the side either. My thought, I think you're right. I would take 3 with UAB. I might lay 2 with Western Kentucky as the lean, just because it's less than 3 and it's hard to win by 1. So I mean, I think my lean would be Western Kentucky -2. But I'm like, I think it's priced really well.
Yeah. This might be the toughest game that we've, since we've gone to this new format. This might be the toughest one to give a C grade on the side.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so noon Eastern on Saturday, Syracuse and Clemson. Hey, y'all, I've been on Clemson a lot this year. I feel like my record on Clemson has been pretty dang good going back to middle of last season. Zigging and zagging a little bit last year. I'm zagging now. I've been on Clemson all season. I'm going to take the 13.5 with Syracuse. Noon start, early kick, sleepy crowd. I think this is too many points. I think that Syracuse offense is just good enough to put up a few points on Clemson. And their defense is just good enough to slow down Clemson's offense. I think Syracuse is just good enough to lose by 10. I think they lose by 10. Sideline says 12. I'm getting 13.5. Because are you with me or not?
Well, to quote I don't know whichever character it was from The Dark Knight. You either die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain. And we have just completely flip-flopped on this because I want to lay the points with Clemson. I just like what I've seen from Clemson this season. They have been good to us. You talked about it. And this is definitely one thing that is clouding my judgment is I somehow have watched quite a bit of Syracuse football this season.
Yeah,
and I'll be damned if they're not like one of the top 10 luckiest teams in FBS. And it's like at some point
that's reflected in the model, right?
It should be, but like it's just is it like a half a point or a point? Because that's really all it would take from the model saying that there's an edge on Syracuse to saying there's an edge on Clemson. I just really like what I've seen from Clemson this season. I think they have fixed a lot of the things. So the thing is like they were still covering games last year, but what I was seeing with my eye telling me like, hey, like there's, this team's got some issues, but they were still covering for the most part. Well, now it's like the opposite. They're covering games, and like my eyes is kind of aligning with, I think they're a little bit underrated for how they're playing this year. I think I'm going to go with DJ. Still can't say his last name after a year and a half. I think that people are just still living in that world of he wasn't very good at the beginning of last season. He's not a world beater right now.
Yeah, he still makes some mistakes, but he is
improved pretty dramatically from last season. So
you're starting to see the potential realized.
Yeah. And so I would lean the other way. I would lay the 13.5 points with Clemson just because, 11 a.m. crowd. I don't care. I think that Syracuse, I think, is going to need a lot of luck to cover in this game.
All right. Well, we'll let the model be the tiebreaker for our official lean. So I'll say official lean Syracuse, but a C grade pick since we do not align. So 0 units on this one since we disagree. I will say last thing I'll say about the site on this one is this feels a lot like James Madison last week, where I said, hang on, people, we're getting a little carried away with James Madison. I would say the same thing with Clemson. I've been high on them, but I think this is a little bit too much. I've been high on them for a long time.
I was about to say this just does not align with anything from the past year and a half.
I know, but at some point there is a point where it's like there's an overreaction. I just think we've gone too far. But we'll see. Total 49.5. I have no feel for this total.
Nope.
Yeah. Maybe when we do have a feel for the total for here.
Yes.
12:30 Eastern kickoff. Duke and Miami. Miami's a 9-point favorite. Total of 58. Sideline says it should be Miami minus 9.6. So Sideline doesn't really like something either way. Sideline really wants you to get 10 with Duke. I think 9's good enough. I mean, for me, I've got Duke plus 9. And I've got the under 58. The question is just, how do you feel about it? How passionate are you about the dog and the under in this one?
Well, let's give the under 58 an A grade because I feel really good about that one. Miami's FBS games this season have had totals of 37. I'm going to go with 26. Then the one outlier, Middle Tennessee, where Middle Tennessee could just do no wrong. That one had a lot of points. Only 51 with North Carolina. And when you only have 51 points with North Carolina, that's when flashing sirens here, flashing lights. And then only 34 with Virginia Tech. We mentioned it in the Discord this past weekend why we did not play the under in the Miami Virginia Tech game.
Yeah, it did not take very long in that game. I mean, it was like 5 minutes in. I had that game up and I was like, why? Why did we do this? Like, what were we thinking?
Yeah, and so we're not making the same mistake here. So A grade on the under 58 in this game.
I agree. And Duke and Virginia Tech are fairly similar, right? Yeah. I mean, better defenses and offenses.
Yes, much better defenses is what I would say. Duke, and so I think my thought there kind of aligns with, I would also lean toward taking the 9 points here. Duke has been very competent this season. They beat Virginia. They only lost to Georgia Tech by 3. They only lost to North Carolina by 3. They only lost to Kansas by 8.
They were beating North Carolina with 30 seconds to go, needed a couple fourth down stops, just couldn't quite get it down the stretch. And there were a lot of people in the comments last week telling me I was crazy for giving Duke plus 7 and A grade. I mean, they almost won the dang game.
They did almost win the game. So Duke's, I would just say competency this year, coupled with Miami's just terrible offense for the most part. And what I would say about Miami's offense is you also have to remember the offenses that Mario Cristobal had at Oregon, none of which were ever, just really great. And maybe the most incriminating thing is when you think about what he did with Justin Herbert at the time he had there. And like, you look back now and it's like, man, just let him cook and do his thing. And your offense would have probably been really, really good. Yeah. But they just kind of constrained him a lot. So anyway, where I'm going with this is I think there's a pattern with Cristobal teams and their offenses having.
There are still a few people out there who believe in him as like an offense offensive-minded coach, and I'm like, I do not.
No,
I've seen
not at all.
Or it's trolls. Maybe it's trolls. I don't know, but there's some people out there who I think still are backing him, and I'm like, you're crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a good recruiter. So you recruit good enough players, like eventually talent can overcome even like so-so coaching sometimes. And so I'm not giving up hope on him being a really good coach and doing good things at Miami. But like just this year, their offense is not going to be it. So my play on Duke would be correlated with me thinking that this is going to be under. So I would go A grade on the under 58, and I would go B grade on the +9 with Duke.
My gut, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. My gut says B grade as well. Okay. My gut says I want double digits for an A grade. But I'm wondering if the +9 is clouding our judgment. If we just saw this as +7.5 and said, wait, we're getting a touchdown and a hook, how is Miami going to win by more than 2 scores? Would we feel stronger about it? How is Miami going to win this by 2 scores? This feels just like the North Carolina game, but isn't North Carolina better than Miami? I know North Carolina defense is a little bit worse, but like,
I think North Carolina is better than Miami.
And we saw what happened last week. Like my gut says my first thought was B, but as I'm like just analyzing this, I'm like, isn't this also kind of an A? Like, wouldn't this be a B grade pick at Duke +6.5, where we're like Duke can keep this close, but once you get over a touchdown, like I feel like that we saw enough last week that we got 7 with Duke, and I said that was crazy. Isn't getting 9 here against Miami crazy as well? I mean, it was flipped the location, but I'm not that impressed with Miami at all.
No, I'm not either. Yeah, I would not argue with you if you wanted to make this an A play.
I think it's an A grade play personally.
Okay, well, let's do it.
Let's double A grade play this. Let's have a low scoring, ugly game, and then we don't have to care how it plays out as long as it doesn't get overtime and screw up our underplay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, 1 p.m. Eastern, Bowling Green at Central Michigan. Central Michigan's a 6.5-point favorite. Sideline says Central Michigan by almost 10. Central Michigan's ranked 104th. Bowling Green is ranked 122nd. It's enough of an edge for me to think Central Michigan's a good play here under 7, but I don't feel that confident about it personally. I don't know. Maybe it's Bowling Green like occasionally looks competent and occasionally looks like the worst team in the MAC, maybe Akron aside. Central Michigan sometimes looks solid and other times kind of lays an egg. I don't know how confident I feel about laying the 6.5. What's your take on that?
About once every episode, I ask myself, do we really have to talk about every game? And this is the game that is making me ask that question this show. I literally have nothing on this game. I would lean towards laying the points, but that is just a lean. I would not want to put anything on that. I would give that a C grade at best, just because I am and have been low on Bowling Green. Central Michigan has been nothing to write home about. But when you look at Lou Nichols and McElwain, the head coach there, like they're just overall a better team than Bowling Green. So
and let's look at Bowling Green, right? Got blown up by UCLA, hung in there early, but UCLA looks pretty solid now. Whatever. Lost in overtime at home to Eastern Kentucky. Not good. Nope. Then Bowling Green beats Marshall. Okay, maybe they're solid. Then Bowling Green gets destroyed by Mississippi State. Whatever, we can give that a pass. Then Bowling Green only beats Akron by 3, and then gets beat by 31 at home to Buffalo, and then they beat Miami of Ohio. This team is just confusing to me. I don't know where to put them. I think I agree with you. I think let's give this a C grade. We would lean Central Michigan at anything under a touchdown. I think it gets to a B grade if it gets to 5.5, maybe 6. At some point, it's a little stronger there if the number comes down.
Yeah, I think I would say 5.5, just because.
You want the
because like we said, who knows?
Okay, I'm fine with that. Yeah, so a lean here at 6.5. If it gets a 5.5, we're actually comfortable putting.
I do like that we could potentially be zagging here. So Bowling Green good last game, so let's zag and bet that they're gonna have a bad game this time.
Yeah, total of 55.5. Any words?
I mean, I would play under at 55.5.
Okay.
With a B grade.
Under 50.5, B grade.
No. Under you said under 55.5.
Oh, sorry.
Like, sure. No. Under 55.5, sure. I'd play
50.5. Okay.
I'm not.
All right.
I'm not touching this.
All right, pass for me as well on this one. It's fun to ignore some of these games. There's too many of them anyway. 3 p.m. Eastern, Rice at Louisiana Tech. Yeah, this is the one I have to talk about this one. But viewers, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Sideline says this should be Rice minus 1.4. 3.5's a lot for Rice, and the model's been a little bit down on Rice this year. So here's my take on this, and this is why I think grabbing the 3.5 is the smart play with Louisiana Tech. The question is it worth investing in? And let me lay out the case for you. Let me see how convinced you are. Sideline says Rice minus 1.4. I know it's been a little down on Rice, but it can't be down by that much because Rice still isn't that good. So even if we are down 1.5 on Rice, and the model should be 1.5 higher on them, it would say Rice minus 2.9. Getting 3.5 over that key number of 3 still makes Louisiana Tech a decent play. It feels like it's the smart play on the right side, but given the model's bias against Rice, I definitely need some concurrence for you before we make that an official play that we would invest in.
Oh, no, I would not invest in this. Rice 4-0 against the spread the past 4 games. I think they've got it going in the right direction. I would say if you like Louisiana Tech in this game, I might play the money line because if Louisiana Tech wins this game, I think it has become a shootout, and I don't know if the points are going to matter, and I don't know if Rice has the horses to keep up if this game's turned into a blowout. Like Rice wants this game to be in the 40s, low 50s at the top end, where La Tech wants this to be in the upper 50s or the mid 60s or something. So I don't think this is a good investment either way, but if you do lean towards Louisiana Tech, you might look at the money line.
And total 57?
Nope. I think this is like UAB in Western Kentucky. Watch 5 minutes of it, and you might be able to tell.
Okay, let me throw this out there. This could be a fun play for the viewer. Maybe we'll track something like this. I want to see your reaction to this based off what you just said, Cousin Jared. Parlay Louisiana Tech money line and the over for half a unit. Take the other half unit, parlay Rice minus 3.5, or maybe buy it down to 3 if you feel like it. And the under, since those are correlated like that, you've got yourself more of a, it's not a great payout, but because the correlation there, does that seem like something that the way you might either pick one of those or just play it safe and play both, and you're giving away a little bit of your profits, but you will overall profit off of that?
Yeah,
assuming it plays out the correlated way we think it will.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea because I do think if this game goes over, Louisiana Tech's probably won.
Yeah, so we always talk about the correlation in games, and sometimes the parlays can actually make sense within that game. The same game parlay thing being the catch, sometimes they make the odds way terrible, but if you're just doing standard parlays, that's not the case. So something to kind of consider that one if you're eyeing an investment on that game, since we think the total and the sides are so correlated. 3:30 Eastern, Boston College and Wake Forest. I like this Wake Forest team. The model's really coming around on them. I think 20.5 is short. Sideline says 22.2. It's enough of an edge percent-wise, according to the math, for me to fight for Wake Forest and lay the 20.5. Do you feel strong enough on this to give it an A grade, fading Boston College, or is it only a B grade pick because it's a lot of points? That's my question.
Well, I mean, y'all know how I feel about laying a lot of points. It's just not something that I like to do, but definitely Wake Forest is a side. So this is definitely a B grade for me, for sure. The total, I mean, who knows? The issue here is that Boston College, even with Wake Forest's porous defense, I'm not sure that Boston College can score enough points to get this one over. This feels like maybe a 38-17 game or like a 38-10 game. And so, like, I don't know. Do you have a strong feeling on the total?
No, I think it's the same. I have the same issues, right? When I just don't know how many Boston College are going to score. I don't know if it's close enough late for Wake Forest to keep trying. If Boston College accidentally scores 14 first half points,
it's going over.
It's going over, right? Wake Forest is going to play most of this game, and Wake Forest is going to put up, 45 themselves, right? If it's 24-3 Wake Forest at the half, it's not going over at all. So I don't have a feel for this total. I think it's a pretty highly variable total.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at Boston College schedule, they played Florida State and it was 44-14. So that one only got to 58. So like I think you could very well see something like that here. It's just, I think there's a lot of ways this goes under, which doesn't make me feel good about the under. I never feel good about an under in a Wake Forest game. But I just think there's a lot of ways this one could go under.
I think the question is, do we have any evidence that Wake Forest can go under a total like 61? I mean, the Army game, maybe this plays out kind of like that, right? That was 55.
Yeah. And so like in most of the scenarios where this game goes over, it's still like upper 50s. It's not like there's not a way where you're like, oh man, this game is played, the total in this game is up being 52. Like I don't know if that necessarily it exists. So yeah, I think there's too much variability here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So B grade pick for us on Wake Forest minus 20.5. BYU and Liberty, 3:30 Eastern. BYU, I how many weeks in a row now have I said, like, my narrative on BYU, my thought is I just don't think they're that good. And that continues to pay out. I don't know about that opening game against Baylor. If that was like all they had. We did talk in our season preview episode, we talked about the season wearing on, being a grind for them, constantly playing good teams and that taking a physical toll on them. And I don't know how much that is the case, but I mean, we are just seeing that they just look worse every week. And now they get to go play a Liberty team that is 6-1, but according to Sideline ranked 80th, and BYU is still 66. So it's a very soft 6-1.
Wow, BYU is 66th.
BYU 66th.
Wow.
Sideline says this should be BYU minus 1.3, so that BYU's basically should be somewhere between a pick'em and -3. Getting 6.5 with Liberty is a steal, in my opinion. I love this Liberty side at this number. 7 would be even better. But I mean, I think getting 6.5, 7, I think makes too much sense. BYU can't stop anybody. Liberty's going to score a lot of points, and BYU will score some points too. But I mean, in a shootout type game, give me the 6.5. I kind of like the total over 58 too. I just, it's not just the last week's game. It's that when you saw BYU Notre Dame, right? We loved that under, and that game barely held on to the under, and that was with Notre Dame involved, right? I don't think there are many teams that rival kind of the way that they play and slowing it down and the discrepancy between offense and defense. And again, like I said, as the week goes along, it just seems like BYU's offense is still humming along, but that defense just looks worse and worse and worse. I mean, I kind of think over 58. I kind of think let's grab the 6.5 points. That's my take. What is yours?
Let's give the 6.5 points. So is this going to be an A grade or a B grade?
I'm good with an A. I would give it an A personally.
Okay, let's do an A grade. And part of the reason why. Okay, so let's start with the bad part first.
Bad part is we're not going to talk about Liberty's last game.
Okay, well, I didn't have to say it. Gardner Webb also played Coastal Carolina pretty close.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But what I would say is liberty. I'm watching way too many college football.
I hope that's not I hope that's not a copyright infringement. I don't think it is.
Yeah. Who's to say? Liberty has played their best games of the season when they've played their best competition. So only lost to Wake Forest by the 1 point, beat UAB. So they had
one at Southern Miss.
One at Southern Miss. So they definitely had some good games. The problem is they played their worst games when they played their worst competition, like Akron and then Gardner Webb last week. So I think this definitely qualifies as the former there, a big game. So I think you're going to get their best effort. And I was watching the Arkansas BYU game, and I cannot tell you how many times I asked myself, is BYU the worst defense in college football? Because it was just like, I mean, it was unbelievable, in my opinion, kind of what Arkansas did in that game. So give me the 6.5 points because who's going to stop who? And sure, if you feel good about the over 58, I cannot, wash my eyes fast enough with what happened to that BYU defense last week. So let's go over 58 with a B grade as well.
Yeah, I was going to say with respect to the over as well, Liberty played Wake Forest earlier this season, and that game had 73 points. And I'm like, at this point, who's to say the difference between Wake Forest and BYU? Like, they're not that different, which is a crazy statement to make based off what we thought coming into the season. But and offensively, like BYU's not that far behind Wake Forest with regards to how much they're scoring. It's just they're obviously not as good as Wake Forest. I don't want to misspeak here, but yeah, defensively, they're, probably a little bit worse than Wake Forest, and offensively they're maybe a little bit worse, but it's not by much. And so, I think there should be a lot of points in this one. Where would we go for an A grade over on this? Like, given that Liberty can play in high scoring games.
55.
55. Okay. Yeah. All right. I feel like anything with a total, your answer is 55.
Yeah. Basically it is.
All right. 3:30 Eastern, Purdue and Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a short 2.5 point favorite. Sideline says it should be Wisconsin -2. So it says it's priced pretty well. Total is 51. I like Purdue in this spot for a couple of reasons. Number one, I still don't trust Wisconsin. I know now they look better with the interim coach, whatever. I just don't trust them. I think Purdue's kind of frisky. I think they're fun. I think they're the side you want to be on here. The question I have is just, do we want to take 2.5 or do we want plus odds on the money line?
I would lean towards taking the 2.5 because I feel like we've seen Purdue play a bunch of 2-point games. I don't know. I can't even tell you now. I got so angry what the final score of the Syracuse-Purdue game was.
Yeah, I don't remember
that was a crazy game. I know Purdue won their last game by like 2 points. When they played Maryland, did they win? They either won or lost that one by 2 points.
They won by 2.
Yeah, Purdue seems to always find a way to be in an awkwardly scored game where 2.5
Purdue lost by 3 to Syracuse, but if I remember correctly, that one had a bunch of late scoring and weird 2-point conversion stuff. Like, it could have easily been a 1 or 2 point game, if I recall.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're recalling correctly. And so I would lean towards taking the 2.5 points with Purdue. So let's give that a B grade. What's your thought on the total here? Because mine is under, because I could see a bunch of ways that this goes under. If Wisconsin wins this game, I think it definitely goes under. But I mean, I could definitely see this being like 27-20 if Purdue wins. And so, like, I think there's just a lot of ways that this game doesn't go over this number.
So I think my question for you, viewer, is the same. Obviously, you, viewer, cannot respond to me, and we can't go back and forth about it. But what do we make of this new look Wisconsin with the new coach, right? They steamrolled Northwestern on a game that I said, I love it, lay it. Northwestern's terrible. Like we said, we could just be talking about an A grade against Northwestern no matter what, right? Last week, losing to Michigan State, not good, right?
No.
Which almost makes you back to Purdue plus 2.5. Like, where? I mean, is it just plus 3's an A grade? But I mean, at some point, where Wisconsin just not that good. They lost to Michigan State. Like, what?
Yeah.
But I think the question is, how do we feel about that game? Because that game had some points in it, but it also had some points because there were no red zone stops that led to field goals, and that's going to be the difference in this total. Is if that Michigan State game, if each team, if there were, what do they get to overtime at 21-21, one team stops the other for a field goal, it's 21-17 and it goes way under. And this whole new look Wisconsin scores a bunch of points turns into, that was when they played Northwestern. They're no different than the old Wisconsin, right? Yeah. As it turns out, all those turned into touchdowns, and the game ended up with 62 points because it went to overtime, or maybe it's 28-28 in regulation. Either way, same scenario. Like, everything was touchdowns. Like, it would not have taken much to get that under. And
if Jake were here, he would tell you that Michigan State's pass defense is atrocious, and so that Purdue is going to be more of a test for Wisconsin's offense than Michigan State was.
Yeah, which I don't know. I guess all that to say on the total, I think you either have to love the under or Purdue. I kind of think it's one or the other, right?
Yeah,
because
I think that makes sense.
Because it's either you think that Purdue's going to score, but Wisconsin defense is good, it's going to keep it low scoring, or like you said, Michigan State isn't, just a different animal than Purdue is, and Purdue is going to pressure that Wisconsin defense in a way similar to, the way Ohio State put up 52. Remember how Illinois put up 34 on them, right? So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of all that. It's just, I feel like it's got to be one of those ways.
Yeah. So I guess after talking this out, I think obviously the thing I feel most comfortable about this is the 2.5 points with Purdue. So let's make that a B grade with Purdue, and just like put a pin in this total for now. Maybe if it goes back up to like 52 or something like that, 52.5, and maybe we come back and revisit it. But yeah, let's go ahead and lock in Purdue plus 2.5.
And then +3 A grade or +3.5 A grade?
I think, I mean, again, because that's partially how I think the game's going to play out, where I think there's more ways it goes under. So I would probably say A grade at 3.
A grade at 3. Okay. All right. Yeah. 4 p.m. Eastern, Hawaii at Colorado State. My Rainbow Warriors coming through last week. I still am high on Hawaii. I'm still not on Colorado State. A little bit of concern Hawaii coming to the mainland, but
that's just what I was going to ask you is how do we think that's still a thing? I mean, it is a thing, but like how big of a thing is it?
Right. It is a thing because you cannot argue with the physical wear and tear of the flying that distance back and forth, right? That is a thing. They played really well at San Diego State, and they played fairly well at New Mexico State. The box score tells you it was a lot closer than the final score would indicate.
Yes.
This is at altitude in Colorado State. That's the only fears. Now you're talking about travel to the mainland and altitude. I still think 4.5. I still think grab the 4.5. Just the question is just how confident are we in that? Something says 4.4. I just think Hawaii is on the way up. I like what they're doing. It's just I think it could be a tight, low-scoring contest. I told you I'll take the under last week in the Nevada-Hawaii game. That worked out as well. I would tell you to take the under here as well. It's a tight, low-scoring ball game. The question is just, is the altitude, the travel, is that more going to make it, Colorado State 17-10, or can it be 17-14? So I'm on the dog and I'm on the under. So I'll let you take it from there and see if we can land on a consensus here.
So definitely, I would say take the 4.5 points as well. That would be a B grade for me, just because Hawaii coming to the mainland. I don't know what number I'd have to get to get an A grade. Probably like 7. It would have to be quite a large number there for me to give it A grade level confidence. Man, 46 is a low number, man. And I think about yeah, sure. Like I said, you're never going to have to try to convince me very hard to get me to play an under. So if you feel pretty good about this, I feel like you've been on. You've got Hawaii pegged fairly well for the most part this season. So if you feel good about the under 46, then I'll go with you with a B grade on that as well.
I do, and I'm pushing for an A. Let's look at Colorado State. Okay, let's throw out the Michigan game. That's fine. Against Middle Tennessee State, that game, which was a score fest for them, had 53 points. Washington State, they got clobbered in. That one had 45 points. They lost to Sacramento State by 31. I don't even know what to do with that. Coming back to Nevada, that had 31 points. Last week against Utah State, 30 points. I mean, it's just low scoring, ugly. Like I said, 17-10, 17-13, 17-14. Like, that's where this game's sitting. I don't think this game gets to 40. I think it stays at like in the 30s, honestly. I said, I feel like I'd push for an A grade on this one personally. And if there's any ill effects from Hawaii traveling, it's probably going to affect the offense more than the defense, because it's going to affect, the rhythms of the timing of the passes and everything.
Yeah. Okay. If you feel that strongly about it, then we can go A grade on the under 46.
All right. So A grade on the under, and then B grade on Hawaii plus 4.5. And I'm like you, to give this an A grade for Hawaii. You're actually a little more aggressive than I would be. I might want 7.5 or even something higher, just because sometimes it just has not gone well for them historically. This is not just a 1-year thing. I could easily see Colorado State winning this game, 17-7, right? Something like that, or 20-10, and so I would need a really big number before I got to A grade. I think Hawaii in the points is smart, because if the direction they're going is right, I think they can pull the upset, because Colorado State's garbage. But there's just too much variability for me. It's really all about the variability, and I hope that's what you're picking up on. Sometimes the difference between an A and a B grade, it's sometimes about the number, and it's sometimes about the amount of variability we think. If we think we have a pretty narrow band of what we think is going to happen, it makes you feel a lot better than if it's a wider range of outcomes. And this one has a wider range of outcomes. I can see Hawaii winning. I can see them losing, or 17-3, just not showing up. I cannot see this game going over 46. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and make a call on this one and say it doesn't get to 40. I think it's going to be ugly midday football that everyone ignores, because who would watch this game?
Yep, I agree. Can you watch this game?
Can you? Maybe not, right? With Hawaii. Another game that might not get a lot of eyeballs, 4 p.m. Eastern, Vanderbilt at Missouri. I liked backing Missouri twice. I think they were off last week. Twice the last 2 weeks. Before that, as dogs, they covered both easily. Once against Georgia, once against Florida. They should have won the Florida game. They outplayed them.
Yeah, they did.
I think in the Discord, I messaged during the Florida game. I was like, this Missouri team is awesome. They're making us so much money. I can't wait for them to lose next week to Vanderbilt. And then I looked at their schedules like, holy crap, the next game is Vanderbilt. It's just they have a bye in between. So now they get to lose to Vanderbilt based off my prediction.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is, isn't that what Missouri does? Like at some point, how do I get this? It's different players, right? It's not the same players, but like this feels like what Missouri does, right? And look good and upstart team and going to win 8 or 9 games in the SEC and compete. And they're hanging right in there with the big boys. And then they go out and they just lay an egg against someone that they should crush. So, I mean, I'm nervous about this game if I'm a Missouri fan because this feels like a game that they have blown in years past. Sideline says it should be Missouri minus 14.5. I think right now it's minus 14 even money. So Sideline likes that, says there's a little bit of an edge there. Total's 52. What's your take on this game?
Man, so I think I haven't felt great about what I saw from Vanderbilt. And the reason that I say that is because, like I said, a couple of weeks ago, I watched almost the entirety of that Vanderbilt and Ole Miss game. And Vanderbilt was leading in that game. They were in that game at halftime. They were in that game early in the third quarter. And it's almost like Vanderbilt didn't want to win the game. It's like they had no interest in trying to stay in the game. There was just a lot of things there that kind of made me question how I don't know. It just left me with a very bad feeling. Like it was almost like I know that you're not comfortable running an up-tempo offense. I know Ole Miss is making you uncomfortable, but at some point you got to do what you got to do to try to win this game. You got to try to pick up the tempo. You got to try to do something different. And they just seemingly were not willing to do that. And so my fear taking the points with Vanderbilt here is that they get down early and then just absolutely do nothing different. And Missouri's defense has played admirably the past few weeks. And so I could see Missouri getting up.
To me, it's all about motivation for Missouri. If Missouri comes out and plays the way they've been playing, they should handle Vanderbilt easily.
Yeah.
I mean, no doubt about that. I agree with you completely. From Nexus standpoint, yes, the way they played defensively, Vanderbilt doesn't score.
Yeah. So I would give probably a C grade to laying the points with Missouri, just because I don't like necessarily what I've seen from Vanderbilt the past few weeks. The total, I think this goes, plays perfectly to the two things that I just said, is that Vanderbilt plays extremely slow, and I think that Missouri's defense has been playing well the past few weeks. So I would lean towards the under 52 here.
I definitely want to play on the under.
Okay.
You could talk me into laying the points of Missouri. I know I joked earlier about Missouri losing to Vanderbilt. Yeah. Here's the thing about Vanderbilt that I just want to talk about. Let me just see how you react to this. Vanderbilt comes out the first week and they crush Hawaii on the road, and we think Vanderbilt's improved. And they are improved for sure. And they beat an FCS school, lose at home to Wake Forest, probably by more than they should have, and that was a little bit of a disappointment. And they went on the road and beat Northern Illinois. Again, they're an improved team. First 4 games, you got positive vibes out of this. Then they get drubbed 55-3 to Alabama. Get a bye week. And it seems like they come out of the bye week, play Mississippi, the best football that they've played in the first half. And then the second half happened. And then that carried into last week, where Georgia beat them 55-0. You could talk me into laying the 14 as a B grade pick with Missouri, because I'm a little bit nervous that we had a bye week off of the Alabama. We washed that from our brains and we went to Ole Miss, and look how well we played at the beginning of the game. And then when that fell apart, look how that carried into Georgia. Now there's not a bye week. How is that going to carry into this week?
Yeah.
So I guess you could talk me into Missouri minus 14 under the premise that this game finishes like Missouri 38-3. just because if they show up, they should be fine. And I'm just really nervous the wheels have fallen off at Vanderbilt after these last 3 games. I mean, that's 3 brutal games.
Yeah.
Losing by 100 points to Bama and Georgia, and then sandwich that with, again, a good half of football against Ole Miss, and then the second half, disaster. So I definitely want an underplay as well. I don't think Vanderbilt scores that many points. 52 is a key number. I mean, I feel like that's an A grade under at 52. Personally.
Yeah.
And I'd give Missouri minus 14 a B grade, but you can talk me down from either one of those if you want.
Well, let's go A grade on the under then, because like I said, I feel like that goes perfectly with kind of what my thoughts were on this game.
It's B minus for me on Missouri minus 14. So you guys said you could get me to the B or you could drop me to the C. I could go either way.
I think I'm going to drop it to a C.
Okay.
I just 14 just seems like on the edge.
13?
If it were like 11, 11. If it were 13, I'd say yes. At 13, I would say a B grade. If it were like 10, you could get me to an A grade.
Yeah, I agree.
But like, 14. To me, I see a lot of ways this pushes at 14. I guess.
Okay. All right. So 13 B grade though.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I'm down with that. But A grade on the under 52. 3 night games we're going to talk about on this episode. 7:30 Eastern, UCF at East Carolina. I've been riding UCF here lately. Let's do it again. UCF minus 5. Let's lay the 5 with them. Sideline says 8.8. I mean, sideline says we should be on one side of a touchdown, and we're on the other side of a touchdown. I mean, this one seems pretty clear, cut and dry here. I want to be on UCF minus 5. The only question is A or B grade, is my opinion. Total of 65.5. I think East Carolina is just mediocre, and sideline has UCF ranked 18th. I mean, we talked about crazy. This. We talked about this UCF team from the very start. I said there was a chance this team is a top 25 team, and I think the week I said that they laid an egg, but since that egg, I think they've come out and played pretty well every single week.
They have. Yeah. And I've been wrong on UCF. I've been correct on UCF a couple times, but it was by dumb luck that I ended up being right on them. And so, like, for instance, one game I played the under. I said it was too many points. I think that UCF's offense has some issues. And the thing is that their defense played lights out and their offense was great. And so that game went under because their defense played so well. So I've been wrong on UCF. So let's remedy that. Sideline is saying that there's a pretty big discrepancy here. So I will give this an A grade on UCF laying the 5 points as well.
I like it.
65.5. Man,
you could have talked me into an under on this if it wasn't for the fact that they scored 70 last week.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, I think I would probably still lean towards the under just because the Memphis ECU game. What was that? Was that tied at 23-23 when it went to overtime, or was it 30-30? I can't remember. I think it was. No, it was 30-30 when it went to overtime.
That game got wild. I mean,
it did get wild, which I should have known. I shouldn't have.
It's Memphis.
I shouldn't have gotten involved.
With that. But hold on, we have to celebrate the moment here that we all took Memphis plus points, and it cashed, covered. And that's like the first time that's ever happened in a Memphis game, I think.
Yeah. So I think I would lean to the under here just because it's a lot of points. 65 is one of the key-ish numbers in the 60 area, and so like you getting on the top side of the 65. So I would say do the under, but I don't feel confident about that.
I don't either. ECU South Florida had 66 in it. The Memphis game got pretty drunk. ECU Old Dominion had 60 in it, and I think that UCF at this point is a higher scoring team than Old Dominion is.
Yeah.
So I agree with you in that I think I would go under rather than over, but I don't think I could play it. I think this one would to go under. I'd be looking for like maybe under 69.5, under 70 or something. And I don't think we're going to see that number. So, but I don't think I'd play over either unless it got a lot lower. Cause like you said, 65.5 is a lot for a non like Big 12 type game. And this doesn't feel quite like that. The Oklahoma States or the Techs or the whatever that we're talking about that we think there'll be just a ton of points in. So I don't think I'd go over either, but A grade play on UCF minus 5 for us on that one. 7:30 Eastern, Minnesota at Penn State. This one, of course, is of note because of the injury to the Minnesota quarterback. Poor Minnesota, running back, one of the best running backs in the country. It's hurt, comes back. Now the quarterback is hurt.
Yeah, and their best receivers out for the season as well. So let the record show that. No,
not
terrible injury luck.
Injuries aside, just based off of the metrics of how they've done this season, along with what we projected coming into this season, Sideline says this should be Penn State minus 1.1. But this is one where you kind of got to put a big asterisk on that, throw that out, whatever you want to do with it, because I don't know how to adjust this number for the quarterback situation, but I'm not treating Penn State minus 1.1 as a realistic gauge of this because Minnesota is not at full strength. So again, kind of just there, that's been said. Now we can throw that out and say, how do we feel about Minnesota and Penn State? A Penn State team that pretty solid, but I mean, they just got thumped by Michigan. Of course, that's Michigan. Minnesota is no Michigan. So we have to, of course, keep that in mind. Total is 44.5. I definitely am leaning under, but I am sad that it's 44.5, not 45. I will say that much. Because Jared, what is your take on this one?
I mean, okay. So for me, the Penn State game, I mean, I laid the 7 points with Michigan last week. I thought Michigan was pretty good. Michigan is up to fourth in sidelines ratings there. And so I think that just says a lot more about Michigan than it does about Penn State. So I would say kind of for me, not completely setting that aside, but definitely weighting that more towards Michigan there. I think this is, you lay the points with Penn State or pass. I think this is going to be a bounce back spot for them. And Minnesota in a game where whoever won that Illinois game last week was in the driver's seat, pinning the game with Purdue, in the driver's seat for the Big Ten West. And so now I think that Minnesota has potentially lost some of what they wanted to play for the season, whereas Penn State, I mean, not saying this in a disparaging way, but this is kind of what Penn State does every season, lose to Michigan or lose to Ohio State, kind of, lose control of the Big Ten East pretty easy, and then they kind of usually always find a way to bounce back and finish, 10-2, 9-3, something like that. So I think this is Penn State or pass. Me personally, I think I like a play on the Penn State money line here if you were looking for a slightly different angle on it, just because I think it's going to be very difficult for Minnesota to win this game. Could Minnesota, ugly this thing up and end up being Penn State winning 23-20? Sure. I could definitely see that as a potential outcome, but I just don't know if I see any way that Minnesota goes into Happy Valley and pulls off the upset without Morgan at quarterback. So I would lean towards laying the 4 points with Penn State, but I may even like Penn State on the money line a little bit more.
Minus 195 is the current money line price. I tend to agree. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, and that lends itself to laying 4 is a little bit scarier, but in a low scoring game, the probabilities bunch up pretty heavily there. So, I wouldn't lay minus 190, minus 195 on a money line in a -4 situation with a total of 70. That wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? But in a total south of 45, I'm kind of with you there. So a B grade money line, Penn State minus 195.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, and the total. I mean, is the buy point 45, or is this we'd still play it under to 42?
Yeah, so
41. 41, really?
Yeah.
My thought is it's a B grade under right now up until maybe 41, and A grade at 45.5. It's kind of my thought, but
So Michigan ran for 400 yards against Penn State. Could Minnesota? Yeah, it is a lot.
But they had to respect the pass game too.
Yeah, that is true, which they don't have to do here, because that's just what I was going to ask. Could Minnesota just literally not pass the ball and run for almost 300 yards?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I mean,
I don't think they have I also don't think they have the linemen that Michigan has.
Yeah. So I mean, I definitely like the under here because who's going to score? I think best case scenario, one team gets to 27, and the other team in that scenario probably has only gotten to 14 or something. So maybe this game gets to 41. Maybe. So I like that.
Lock in the B here, or wait, maybe gets to 45.
Yeah, I would say wait, maybe get to 40. I don't know, because I wouldn't want to go below 44. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't play it below 44, but I think there's a lot of extra value there. So,
okay. So you think lock in the B?
Let's lock in the B grade at 44.5. Yeah.
All right, so B grade on the under 44.5, B grade on Penn State money line at -195. Yep. 8 p.m. Eastern, Kansas State at TCU. This one should be another fun Big 12 game. I mean, this round robin with the Big 12 with all the teams pretty good makes for some fun matchups, I have to say. Sideline says TCU -4.7. I'm not going to say this is a letdown spot for TCU, but I mean, anytime you have a situation like last week with the overtime and the comeback and the rush in the field or whatever, you do have to wonder about the teams, where they're at the next week. Kansas State's looked amazingly good this year if you take away the Tulane loss, which still I was on Tulane and I said that was too many points against a good Tulane team. I've liked Tulane all season, it seems like. But that still was a surprising loss in Manhattan, Kansas. I mean, you take that away, and you got another undefeated matchup in the Big 12. It seems like every time you turn around, the only reason they're not undefeated is because they're beating each other up again, except for this one with Tulane, being the weird one. But I mean, a sideline has TCU 14th, Kansas State 19th. It should be a really good game here. Total is 55.5. And I have to say, I've had a pretty good feel for these Big 12 totals. I think you just got to throw Kansas State out on the Big 12 totals, though, because you just don't know what they're going to do. And that's a credit to really good coaching. They can zig and zag. They can come up with a really strong defensive game plan and say, here's how we're going to attack you. Here's how we're going to slow you down. Here's how we're going to keep our offense on the field. Or they can apparently, like we saw against Oklahoma, just run and gun and just say, you can't stop us, nanny, nanny, boo-boo, right? So I don't know what to do with Kansas State total. So for me, it's a pass on the total. What is
Sounds
your
good to me,
cousin Jared?
No, I completely agree with you on the total. If you don't have a feel one way or the other, I definitely don't have a feel either. You mentioned that this is a letdown spot for TCU. I was not particularly impressed with TCU for the majority of that game against Oklahoma State, but the way that they came back and won, I almost think that that's almost a boost to them, kind of the way they won that game, even in double overtime. Again, I wasn't very impressed how the game started out, and they seemingly got better as the game went on and eventually pulled it out. So, man, I mean, like you said, Kansas State, just the one blemish with the Tulane loss, but I think TCU is really good, especially offensively. We thought that, looking back at that Oklahoma game with Kansas State, knowing what we know now, it's almost like Oklahoma was in that game until the end. What's TCU going to do when they have a defense that is quite a bit better than Oklahoma's defense is? And TCU's defense isn't great, but it's better than Oklahoma's is. And so I think I would lean towards laying the 3.5 points here. I just think that TCU is really good, and I think they're going to be able to put up points in bunches. But obviously, as the Big 12 expert, I want to know what you think.
I agree with you. It's almost the same thing we talked about with the total in the Minnesota Penn State game, where you were like, I don't want this number to move. I agree with you. I want 3. TCU -3, I think, is a fantastic play. I don't want it to go to 4, though, right? Or 4.5. So I kind of think B grade pick on TCU now, and if it drops to 3, we can add the A grade play. I tend to agree also when you look at the comparison of both of these teams having played Oklahoma. Yes, I know that Gabriel got injured, but even if you just take the first quarter of that game when he wasn't injured, TCU just stomped them, and Kansas State beat them. But it was just one team was like, oh wow, they're beating Oklahoma, and the other team was like, whoa, they are killing Oklahoma. It was just two different worlds, and so I do think that TCU's a better team. I'd love 3. I still like this though at 3.5 or 4. I don't like it at 4.5. That becomes really a dead spot to me. And Sideline would agree with that again, saying 4.7. I will say, I'm going to throw this on the record now. West Virginia, Jake's over on West Virginia has some life in surprising ways. You look at TCU's schedule last week, this week for TCU, next week at West Virginia, the following week home against rival Texas Tech. I mean, this is a horrible spot next week for TCU at West Virginia. Somehow West Virginia is going to win 6 games, and they do not deserve to, but they're getting teams at the right times. But it's not a look ahead spot. I'm not saying TCU's this week. I'm just saying next week is a bad spot for TCU. But I think after last week, this week, a big game here, night game, crowd should be fired up. And I think they'll be looking to keep that undefeated record. So I think they can get the job done. We just got to hope they don't win by a field goal. And that's why it's, I think, a B grade, not an A.
And very good point there about this game being in Fort Worth, because if this game were in Kansas State, it would be completely different on the handicap, for in my opinion.
Yeah. One of the stronger home edges in college football. A lot of them reside in really the Big 12 and the SEC. You got a couple in the Big 10 and a couple, maybe Oregon really, I guess, would be the one out in the Pac-12. But I mean, a lot of them in the Big 12, partially the travel, man, that one, just Manhattan is a fun atmosphere. But yeah, different story there than in Fort Worth. So B grade pick for us on TCU -3.5. Would love 3 if it gets there. But want to lock this in because 3.5 is a better number than 4. All right. Any parting words?
Nope. Let's do this again tomorrow.
We'll do it again tomorrow. We'll bring Jake along. We will run through the kill the clock offense with him, where he'll come back and make all the plays on all these other games. So otherwise, that's all we got. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Picks the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can ensure all the sports betting content we provide on this channel is dropped right into your feed. Again, we'll see you tomorrow with more college football content, baseball content throughout the week, nonstop action here. As always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please, don't bet your eating money.